Yes, I said, honorable member, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I stand to make my contribution on Budget 2023, I wish to place on record my observations as well as that of others. Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, the most underwhelming part of this budget are the measures. Some measures, Mr. Speaker, will have no impact on the current situation, as they are merely being continued. As such, Mr. Speaker, their benefits are already being enjoyed. These measures relate to the maintenance of zero excise tax on fuel and the use of pre-COVID rates for the calculation of applicable customs duties and taxes. Some measures will be of little to no interest to the poor and low-income earners. With the level of withdrawal expected from the Natural Resources Fund, Mr. Speaker, the government could have moved the threshold to at least $150,000, whilst keeping the 1/3 of the gross income. Many of the members of the discipline services and the health sector who are beneficiaries of the elevated salaries payable to them from January 1 will not be amused with this threshold change. Mr. Speaker, the lack of originality in Budget 2023 is evident from the introduction, which bears an eerie resemblance of Budget 2028, if you look at the two. Not complaining, Mr. Speaker, just highlighting that appropriate recognition is due. However, Mr. Speaker, this seems to be a familiar pattern, as for example, the recent signing on an operational agreement for the Natural Resources Fund, without referencing that what was being signed was an updated version of the agreement signed in December 2019 between the former finance minister and the governor. Mr. Speaker, let me pause here now to examine the theme of this budget. Improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow. After reading this theme over and over and giving it a careful thought, Mr. Speaker, I ask myself the question, is this the case for the people of Cane View in Mocha? Mr. Speaker, who recently experienced the worst treatment meted out to them as human beings when their place of abode was destroyed by an excavator, Mr. Speaker. Surely, Mr. Speaker, this cannot be the case of improving their lives for a better tomorrow. Placing myself in their shoes, Mr. Speaker, I definitely cannot agree to the theme as presented for this year's budget. If I had my way, Mr. Speaker, I would rewrite the theme for this budget. And the theme would be destroying lives today for the benefit and prosperity of a few. Destroying lives today for the benefit and prosperity of a few. I also wish to repeat the words of a song written by the people of Mocha that was seen circulating on the media, social media. I will not sing it because it's not appropriate to do so. With impunity, you destroyed our homes, killed our livestock. You have brought us to our knees while you regularize our other squatters in Region 3. Where is the equality? You demolish our homes, bury our livestock alive, homeless and destitute and robbed. Still, you not done, you took my job. Where is the love? And I would add, where is the one Guyana? Mr. Speaker, in his book entitled Reflection on Happiness and Positivity, pages 14, Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum said, the Crown Prince of Dubai, because we are aiming to become little Dubai, who became the Prime Minister of UAE in 2006, when he was interviewed, said, he was asked the question, how much will he spend on happiness programs? He answered, and I quote, happiness does not fall under programs that are separate from the government's daily work. Happiness is the focus of government work, and the government's entire budget must be considered as dedicated to achieving the happiness of our people. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, if only we can recognize and accept that the effect of happiness has on health and the savings that the government can make when the society is healthy, then surely a government that asserts itself as caring will not hesitate to spend more money on its human resource. In this case, Mr. Speaker, will be our public servants, our teachers, our nurses, soldiers, policemen and women, our tushos, our mayors, doctors, our pensioners, our differently abled, just to name a few. We can only imagine, Mr. Speaker, the spiral growth in the economy and productivity as a result of spending more monies on our people. These, Mr. Speaker, are estimated to be worth billions of dollars. Mr. Speaker, investing in our people to make them comfortable and happy should not only be seen as a cost, but as a wealth for the country. I therefore call on this government to step on their accelerator, Mr. Speaker, and increase the salaries and wages of our public servants to a minimum livable income. Mr. Speaker, monies should no longer be seen as a problem since the budget becomes bigger and bigger every year. The budget for this year is $781.9 billion. The only problem here, Mr. Speaker, is the PPP. Money is not the problem. The problem here is the PPP, who in their discriminatory and haphazard manner continues to dole out cash grant here and a cash grant there, here a cash, everywhere is cash grant. Mr. Speaker, we on the opposition would like to propose a people-centered vision of development for cash grants. We are not against cash grants. We must see cash grants as a mechanism with multiple uses. We believe that when structured effectively and delivered in a predictable manner, citizens' lives can be transformed. To that end, rather than employing people on a part-time basis for $50,000 a month, as the government does presently, they should receive the $50,000 as a student stipend while they study and train. This will swiftly empower the Guyanese workforce with the required tools to take advantage of the economy's opportunities. Mr. Speaker, we also believe that cash grants for business development are vital. If we intend to take small businesses seriously, we will massively increase both the allocations to agencies like the Small Business Bureau and increase the size of grants received from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. This will allow small businesses to hire employees and bring new products to the market. With that said, Mr. Speaker, the problem here is not the cash grant. Again, it is the PPP. The PPP parades around Guyana with loud claims of inclusiveness and oneness. But, sir, the reality is totally different from what they are chanting. There are numerous examples of the level of discrimination which was being highlighted by most of my colleagues who spoke before me. Case in point, Mr. Speaker, the PPP boasted of giving $25,000 to hinterland and riverine communities, and in constituency 9 in Bartica, if you listen, you will learn. They literally distributed that $25,000 only to the part of that constituency that they considered voted for them, while completely neglecting all other residents in the same constituency, Mr. Speaker. Again, Mr. Speaker, the cash grant is not the problem. The problem here is the PPP. How can the government hand out only $25,000 to the hinterland people when the cost of living is far more greater or higher than that on the coastland? While those living on the coastland, I'm not saying that they should not have gotten it. Some of them got 50,000, some of them got 150,000, and some of them got more. Tell me, Mr. Speaker, how can this be one Guyana? I therefore say to this government, step on the accelerator and start distributing the resources of this country in an equitable manner to all the citizens. And I will not stand here and pretend it's just at the level of the central, Mr. Speaker, but it reeks also at the local level too. To date, not one single major project has been done in Bartica, Middle or Upper Mazruni, since the PPP took office. Mr. Speaker, the residents are left only to enjoy what the APNU AFC did. Mr. Speaker, at this time, I would like to thank the APNU-AFC for all that they did for the residents of Region 7 as a whole. Thank you, Mr. Patterson, Honorable Member, for the power station at Bartica, the solar farm, the Bartica Stelling, the generator for Cameron. Thank you, Honorable Member Valda Lawrence, for the CT scan machine at Bartica Hospital, the extension of Cameron Hospital, which is yet to be furnished by this government. Thank you for the doctors' quarters that were built in Cameron, Jawala, Kako, and Philippi, who are yet to receive their residents' doctors unto this day. Thanks to the APNU-AFC for the Magistrate Court in Bartica. Thank you for the 21 three-bedroom houses that were built in the Upper Mazruni in villages of Waramadang, Kwebanang, Kamarang, Warwata, Kako, and Jawala. Thank you for the new primary schools that were built in Parima, and my honorable colleague, Mr. Lee, can attest to that. Kamarang, Imbaimadai, Kako, and Etwimbang. Mr. Speaker, I wish to remind this House and citizens of Guyana that we in the APNU-AFC, recognizing the wide gap between the hinterland and the coastland, began to establish radio stations, Mr. Speaker. Radio stations at Oriala, Madhya, Lethem, Bartica, Aishalton, and Mabaruma, so as to ensure that our indigenous peoples were informed about what was happening around them. Thank you, Kati, the honorable member, for the 170 plus ICT hubs that were established at the schools, community centers, RDC boardrooms, and offices. Mr. Speaker, had we remained in office, by now all our remote schools would have been connected. We built and acquired all these buildings within a period of 2 years, Mr. Speaker, with no oil money or carbon credits. Mr. Speaker, no new schools have been built. Mr. Speaker, I will repeat for that comrade. Had we remained in office, by now all our schools would have been connected, all our remote schools. To date, no schools have been built by this government in my region that I know of. However, Mr. Speaker, I must mention, and I wish to commend the Minister of Education, Mrs. Priya Manikchand, honorable member, for sticking to her portfolio and for defending her budget passionately yesterday. Thank you, honorable member, for the new secondary school that will be built in Jawala. This definitely will ease the overcrowded classrooms at the Desiree Caesar Fox Secondary School. Mr. Speaker, I will repeat, this definitely will ease the overcrowded classroom at the Desiree Fox Secondary School and the overcrowded dormitories where students of grades 7 and 8 have to be accommodated in a separate building away from the complex, which can cause security concerns. Added to that, children do not attend class due to the to accept honorable invitation with along with education. I also wish to mention children so that they can at present they would have to pass across the river to attend classes in a church building. Smith, there is a military block. On your accelerator and build a new school amenities for our indigenous children in this part of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I can recall the Honorable Member Nigel Dharamlal during one of his budget presentations for 2021 or 2022, whichever is correct, when speaking about the road projects that were to be done in my region, pointing towards my direction saying, MP Hastings can now jump on her ATV and ride home to Kako from Camarang. 2 years have passed, Mr. Speaker, and I am yet to jump on my ATV to ride home. Mr. Speaker, I can go on with the list of projects that were promised in 2021 and 2022 budgets that have not been honored unto this day. Again, I call on the government to step on the accelerator and get busy with building proper roads and establish ICT hubs and provide every hinterland and remote villages with access to internet so that no indigenous boy or girl be left behind. I wish to note here, Mr. Speaker, the call for a new social contract, as was echoed in the theme used to observe the International Day of World's Indigenous People, and I state, leaving no one behind, indigenous peoples, and the call for a new social contract. Social contract, which is an unwritten contract, must be honored when it comes to our indigenous peoples. They too have a right, Mr. Speaker, as any other Guyanese, to enjoy the quality of life and economic security. To this date, the indigenous peoples of this land is still considered as the most vulnerable population when it comes to economic insecurity and sustainable development. A caring and a competent government will put in place systems to ensure that every citizen is protected or can recover quickly from economic crisis. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the rate of inflation can very well affect individuals who are living above the poverty line now. When suddenly they find themselves in economic crisis and poverty, should they experience a shock and are unable to recover. So we have to put systems in place to avoid same. At this time, Mr. Speaker, I wish to salute and recognize in this honorable house, the two shows of the Upper Mazaruni, who took the government to court 20 plus years ago to fight for their rights, for their ancestral lands to be recognized. I am so proud of them and wish to thank the attorneys and other persons or organizations who were involved in making this history. I remain a proud Akawayo daughter of soil. The recent ruling of the High Court has empowered the Arikunas and the Akawayos and can now move forward in their consultations and discussions in the development of their lands. Mr. Speaker, the NTC conference was reconvened in 2022, but this time under a different circumstance. The indigenous members of parliament from the opposition side were not even extended the courtesy to attend. The former chairman of the NTC and other council members were nowhere present to do a proper handing over of which the NTC is accustomed to do over the years. Where is the transparency and inclusivity that this government is talking about, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I also wish to rebut to the Minister of Agriculture, who stood in this house to say that 7,000 sugar workers were fired under the APNU AFC. I'm asking him to lay the data that supports this figure. We need a data to support that figure of 7,000 sugar workers being fired under the APNU AFC. Unless, Mr. Speaker, he is talking about the sugar workers that were fired prior to 2015, because we all know that some sugar estates were closed during that time. Mr. Speaker, I am happy, and the indigenous people of this country are happy to see that some monies have been allocated to the tune of 124 million for the celebration of heritage, 4.7 billion allocated for Amerindian development programs, and 2.7 for entrepreneurship and other programs. We should encourage our Amerindian village councils to plan their village development plans in time when we are also budgeting for the entire budget. They should not wait until the budget is passed to plan their village council plans, or what we call AVCs. We must train our CSOs. We must train our Amerindian village leaders so that they too can be a part of the consultations and the consultations of the budget, so that as soon as the budget is passed, they must be able to start working on their village plans. Why I say this, Mr. Speaker? Because if I'm going to ask the minister now to submit to this house how many village plans has she received for this year's budget, I'm quite sure she will not be able to give me that accurate figure, for I know some communities have not even started their village plans. So, Mr. Speaker, in closing, we are happy for the monies that are allocated for the indigenous peoples. We're asking that they be
Try again, try again. Normally when this happens, we have to check on the desk by the chief whip for the opposition. We're asking the technician to come down so that this very good presentation by the honorable member could be concluded.
Testing, testing.
I'm speaking from past experience.
This one. Testing.
Honorable member, you could also close from your seat. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In conclusion, I wish to say, Mr. Speaker, bigger the budget doesn't necessarily mean that we will have a better quality of life. If spent in an equitable, in a transparent and an accountable manner, indeed, the people of this country will enjoy a good and a better life. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that I really cannot support the budget in its forms. I really cannot support the budget as how it is presented, and I do not commend that this budget be put in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, honorable member. My apologies for the mic at the podium. Seem to be having some signal issues. I now invite the Honorable Minister of Armed Affairs, the Honorable Pauline Sukai, to make her contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is with great pride that I rise to support the motion for the approval of the budget estimates of the public sector for the financial year 2023. Mr. Speaker, this is the largest budget in Guyana's history, and under the leadership of His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali and the PPPC-led government. This budget will meet the immediate needs of our nation while securing the future of the Guyanese people. It cements the gaps to realizing a one Guyana. As such, this budget could not be presented under a more appropriate theme than improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, permit me the opportunity to congratulate the senior minister within the office of the President with responsibility for finance Dr. Ashni Singh, and his team from the Ministry of Finance for the thorough work done leading to the successful presentation of the 2023 budget. Mr. Speaker, upon the return to office, the PPP civic government met a plethora of issues that affected our indigenous peoples. These range from an indiscriminate neglect and stagnant village economy, all the way to the pause of land tenure activities for our First People. The inclusive and progressive part of this government has sought to propel the rights of our Amerindian brothers and sisters to greater limits. This budget purports a transformative path which is emanated in the absence of new taxes while focusing on promoting incentives that seeks to enhance the lives of our Guyanese people in the most progressive way. It is against this background, Mr. Speaker, that the budgetary allocation to Amerindian and hinterland development will be presented. Mr. Speaker, the budget 2023 has allocated a capital allocation of 4.7 billion towards the continued development of livelihood of our Amerindians. This is in furtherance to other major allocations in the health sector, education sector, infrastructure, social services, which directly translates to the increased standard of living of our indigenous citizens in every region of our beautiful country. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I need to respond to the previous speaker. Since the previous speaker, Mr. Speaker, only spoke about Region 7. Apparently, Mr. Speaker, in all the years that the Honorable Member Don Hastings served as a member of Parliament representing Amerindians in this Parliament, she's never found the time to adequately, and I say adequately, visit any of the other regions to understand the challenges or the progress taking place.
Welcome back, viewer. Yes, good afternoon again. Your afternoon segment of the budget breakdown.
Yeah, we just we were getting a little glimpse of the, I think the Miss Sukai
Suka, yes.
speaking there, and we will definitely deal with the last part we just heard that she was talking about Region 7. After a beautiful presentation was done by MP Dawn Hastings, where she dealt with a lot of issues there, and we will talk to as well shortly. But we did not get to speak to our Member of Parliament, Mr. Hemraj, and we're going to sit down and have that conversation with him, which he gave the presentation as well. That was a beautiful one. He dealt a lot with the cost of living, the effects on people, and he also ventured in to talk about Region 2. So welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. It's a pleasure to be here share my thoughts on budget 2023.
Yes, so we give our MPs an opportunity to kind of unpack some of the things that they would have presented in their budget presentation, their budget speeches. We know the time constraints on the floor. What I want to know, like we asked all the MPs, your general characterization of budget 2023.
Well, honestly, budget 2023 is disappointing. It's uncaring and it's inconsiderate. It's more or less a budget that is geared towards private sector development,
Yes.
and we all know what the reason for that. Because only a small amount of a small section of our guidance population of 750,000 people benefit. Who will benefit? Is the contractors, the people who are given those contracts, the people who supply those materials, which are all in a particular group supporting this government. The people who are looking forward for benefit under this expecting something good, something that will benefit them, are the poor persons, the public servants. Those persons, their needs were not addressed.
I want to add to what you're saying, and you could jump in as I say this. I, as an average Guyanese citizen, I can only identify one significant increase, and that is the school uniform, the uniform gas grant. And that seemed like, for me, the most outstanding thing in this 300 and
of course,
something billion
and they're
dollars.
using it as a mantra every single day. They're talking about this child and cash grant, and which wasn't taken.
By $10,000, I believe.
But the thing is, how effective? I mean, I'm not saying that it wouldn't take the poor on the children of some way.
But it's a one-off. It's once a year.
That's the point I want to make. One-off,
Mhm.
$40,000 along with the cash grant and the uniform. But in this time of high cost of living, I think it should have been a term, a grant that is given to the student for a term.
Yes.
Because would we expect the children to use one uniform
For the entire year.
throughout the year? And the cost of clothing, shoes, and those things change, especially books, pencils, and these things that children need to go to school. So even though, I'm not saying that the cash grant is a bad thing, but how it is being administered. And I think it's used as a political gimmick, because every single time the ministers or the person representing PPP, they always refer to the cash grant.
And I often discussions on this budget. If it is that you have a budget of 700 and how much billion?
$781.9
billion dollars, and all you can look at for some sort of glory is a $10,000 increase in the cash grant.
That was
It
the
tells,
next point.
it tells me a lot.
Well, as I said in my speech, this is very inconsiderate, uncaring. How could you give the people, our elderly, or the less fortunate, the person who depends on the public assistance, $2,000 and for the public assistance, and $5,000 for the old age pension. Now, cost of living has increased, almost doubled from last year to present. What impact would $5,000 have on a poor man, the pensioner? You see, they're not telling you about the 5,000, but they're telling you about how much billion it will cost the government. But in reality, what would $5,000 do to a pensioner, or what would $2,000? What impact it will have on their lives? And my view is zero. Zero.
Because we know the prices of goods and food
Transportation, goods, everything has gone.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a runaway in 2023, because at the minute there is an increase in salary. The people in the shops, the people in the market, the price goes up.
Well, this is modus operandi of this government. They gave public servants 7% in 2 years, and then
That's a far cry. And the thing is that it's very upset about. The government knew about the rising cost of living. They let those people, poor people, endure the sufferings from January to December. And it was in December that they announced the increase.
And it appears
And the
they'll
Vice
do the
President
same.
would have said in January, when we had our debate,
Yeah.
that there are provisions in the budget for raise of salary and increase in salary, but it was never disclosed. And the similar things happening in this one, where they're saying that sometime, I don't know when, teachers' salary will increase. It's there in the budget.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen it.
And the minister responsible hasn't told the nation what it is and
So
what
it
will
seems
happen.
that whatever it might have been, be that the pronouncement of the vice president is what is being carried, even though it's not in the budget. But I want to touch on this this issue of free education
Coming to that.
for our university students.
Yes.
I think it's long overdue.
Mhm.
It's a promise that was made to the people of Guyana, and I think this government is deceiving our people. I believe that it is time. The time is right. The time is now for our students at the University of Guyana to have education free. Now, they spoke about gold. $1.8 billion is spent on the gold scholarship. You know what I mean? It means that the persons who are in that, who are given awarded scholarship will not pay a cent. And guess who benefits? The universities overseas.
Yeah.
And our
I
local
can't see.
university.
Why is it? Even if at this time, if they just come out and say, listen, we can't afford it, then let us get a reduction in the fees.
Yeah.
I think our students deserve that. Not just put $1.8 billion towards gold where the money is spent overseas.
I think one of our economists did say at present as it stands, it would have been $4 billion to deal with the university situation and writing off the debts, everything.
Including writing off the debts.
Exactly, and you're spending 8-point-something billion on gold.
And that's the thing I was about to say. We were also promised that university students get the debt write-off.
Yes.
That, I don't know, I haven't seen, I don't think that is forthcoming in the near future. I think that's just a gimmick,
Minister Parag did say that it is coming before the end of the term, as our MPs would have mentioned that they plan on using it as another election gimmick. Close to elections, you will hear all that's written off and university is free.
I would like to say we're being hopeful there because there are many things.
I doubt whether we will see that in this
They're
first 5
so
years.
unpredictable.
I doubt it.
We're gonna hear about it for the next election.
So we'll take an opportunity for you to highlight any other thing you wanted to.
I just wanted him to zoom in on Region 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
know,
dealt a lot with that,
Region
and even
2
the water
Region 2
situation.
predominantly is a rice farming area. Persons, rice farmers have suffered in 2022. The flooding and the excessive rains. They have the infrastructure, the dams are damaged. The drains the trenches are blocked. And they have been calling on this government for assistance. In fact, in March last year, there was a big demonstration in Regina about the paddy price and all things affecting rice farmers. I believe the Minister of Agriculture went there for like about half an hour or so because they complained that he came and left. They did not address the issues of the farmers. They gave them promises and they left. Today, those farmers are suffering. They lost their crops, they own the bank, and some of them are despaired. They don't know how they will make out. And I called on the finance minister when I made my presentation to go back to Essequibo to speak with those farmers and to some way give them some financial assistance. There's $5 billion. There are $5 billion that is put aside, and there's no use. We don't know the reason what that $5 billion is. And I believe
this is the poverty alleviation $5 billion slush fund.
That is in my mind, that money is used to give the supporters of the PPP whenever they ask.
Yeah.
Like the fish folks grant and the sugar workers grant. It was given to people who who are not sugar workers receive, people who are not fisher folks receive. I know personally people who didn't have a fishing boat, or all they probably did was to eat fish, and they got money. But and I believe that the people, our farmers in Essequibo need the help, and they need the help now, and we can afford it.
Yeah.
And I believe that the government can do it.
And on that note, I want you to, we don't like to end without talking about the way forward. We know there's a lot of money. We're going to be getting lots more in the future as the oil economy matures. What are some of the measures you would like to see implemented?
Well, of course, I mean, infrastructural development is not a bad thing.
Mhm.
But we should, our government, our people have been suffering for quite a long time.
Mhm.
With the advent of oil coming, we have money now. Let us make our people happy.
Mhm.
Let us make our dependents, our old age and our vulnerable people better.
Mhm.
Let us give our hard-working public servant a livable wage, so that we must be happy people. You know, all of us want to be happy. All of us want to have a good life. And at this time, and going forward, with all the revenue from the oil industry, the exponential revenue, as I understand it, is because it's going higher and higher.
Mm.
I don't see why that we could actually balance infrastructure development with people's development.
Yes.
I think also that development of people should come before any other projects. For
Right.
example, bridges and all. Let's have people be happy.
Mhm.
And out of that, we can have our development.
Very good point to wrap up this particular interview with. We want to thank AMP for coming through and sharing
Oh,
his
it was a
views and
pleasure. It's a
his
pleasure to be here.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you very much.
Social, human, and social development first.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
All right. So, folks, we are going to switch gears right now, and we have MPs on standby. we're going to invite the MP that just lit up the floor.
Yes. Yes. Legs left, right, and center.
MP
No,
Don
no,
Hastings
Miss
Williams.
Dawn Hastings Williams.
Right.
She went out there and she did her thing. Welcome, Miss Hastings.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you very much for being here. Of course, you represented region number 7, and of course, the
The
Indigenous People Affairs. And let me say congratulations on your recent appointment. And
Yes,
I didn't get a chance to.
Congratulations.
Thank
And we
you.
saw the mischief, but we paid no attention. We know it's the licks.
Right.
All right. You had a beautiful presentation there, and you really zeroed in on the treatment of Guyanese people by this administration. And you talked about the MOCA situation. You talked a bit about the cost of living. What is your general view on this budget? Like, you had some very catchy phrases there too in your presentation.
Yeah.
The thumbs up.
Well, you had heard my presentation.
Yes.
Said if I had my way, I would have changed the theme of the
Theme.
budget.
Yeah.
To destroying the lives for the benefit and prosperity of a few. And I was referring to what happened in Mocha. Demolition people's homes where they
Yes.
live. I'm sure, it is alleged that those lands are being given to somebody, just for a few to benefit. And so that is why I zeroed in on that. And then the team is good in itself. The budget is not a bad budget, but as you would have heard, I said the problem is the government that is there to implement so that the lives and the quality of life of the people can truly be improved. And for the past 2 years, we have not been seeing that. If you examine the 2021 and the 2022 budget, there were too many promises made during those budgets.
That were not fulfilled.
Yes, and one that I didn't get the chance to speak about was like the Jawala Bridge.
Mhm.
I can't recall. I think it was the AG or the Minister of Finance. I really can't. Was so passionately about empathizing with the children who had to cross the floating bridge,
Mhm.
and that under their government that they're going to build a good bridge. And to this date,
No
I
bridge.
have not known, I don't know if they have done any feasibility studies, but there is no bridge. And I would have, you would have also heard them talk about when Mr. Dharamlal said that I would be able to jump on my ATV and ride
Yes.
home. 2 years have passed, that
Nothing.
has not become a reality.
Yeah.
And there are so many things, projects that were promised in the hinterland communities that have not been fulfilled. Example, roads, bridges, just a few would have been completed for the past years. And like I said, money is not a problem now.
Yeah,
It's a
definitely not a problem.
781.9 billion monies that we are now collecting from profit oil,
Yeah.
carbon credit, royalties. So we shouldn't be talking about money being a problem. We should now be able to spend enough money on the citizens of this country.
Correct.
And in this case, you heard, like I said, it's the public servants.
Yeah.
Our public servants. You know, budget time was always a time where you
Yes,
flew onto the
yes.
television.
Waiting to
And one of the things that you were
Anticipation.
anticipating to hear was the increase in salaries or the reduction of the taxes that will allow you to have more money in your pockets, especially during this inflation time when prices of goods and groceries are skyrocketing. You know, our public servants need a livable income whereby they can provide for their families. But today, you know what? I don't know if it is deliberately done by this government because people have to struggle during this time to put food on the table. They don't have time to think and to talk about what the government is really doing. And you know, it's like a form of oppression.
Yes,
You have to
yes.
struggle every day. You got to know where to bring this food, where to find this to provide for your family, that you don't have time to see what they're doing exactly.
And some
besides
people
that.
doing more than one job and that kind of stuff. Something that was not a norm in Guyana, but more and more people that you talk to, you're hearing they're teaching, they're working taxi, they're doing A and they're doing B because, the struggle is on.
Exactly.
Interestingly, I was listening to your presentation about what the accomplishments of the APNU AFC in a matter of 2.5 years, basically, and going through all of those. And I remember specifically that this number, 1789, I remember this number 1789 because it was former President Granger who always emphasized that we cannot neglect 1789 Region 1, Region 7, Region 8, and Region 9, right? Where the majority of the indigenous communities are located. And I know that the AP and USC would have done significant amount of work in those communities. I want to give you an opportunity to remind our viewers, as you did, about all of those things and why it's important that we remind the public, because if it's up to the PVP, you would believe that nothing was ever done for those communities.
Exactly. In all the presentations, almost in all the presentations, you would hear that nothing was done by the AP and UFC. But we did so many things within a short period of time. And like I said, no oil money was there, no carbon credits were there. But we were able to recognize the wide gap between the hinterland and the coastline.
Yes.
And so we began to roll out the radio stations in Mabaruma, in Oriala, in Aishalton, in Lethem, in Bartica, and Madhya. And, just to let them be aware of what is happening around them, that they must be informed.
Yeah.
But that wonderful program was brought to a halt by the PPP. And they have their reasons for doing so too. They had their reasons for doing so, not on the positive side, in my opinion, but more so on the negative side.
Yeah.
So that they can only be informed about one agenda, which was their agenda, that they keep talking about one Guyana, and would not want them to be aware of any other thing that is happening around them. I also mentioned that within 2 years, we were able to build a lot of primary schools. You would have heard the Minister of Education say that not one secondary school was built by APNU during their 5 years. And I was tempted to say we had no need then because schools weren't being born, secondary schools weren't being born, and it slipped me. But what you see is too many secondary schools are being born, so they have to build new secondary schools. They
Yeah.
don't have a choice.
Yeah,
And then,
definitely.
yes, and you would recall that I said, in my region alone, the people always talk about it because they said that we built so many schools within the 2 years. We built a new primary school in Perino. Then we built a new primary school in Cameroon. Then we built a new primary school in Bamarai. We built a new primary school in Kako and Etrimba. Within these 2 short periods. And the people were happy, the children were happy. They were motivated to attend school every day
Yeah.
because of the
Environment.
that
Yes,
they were
yeah.
in. And we also, had ICT hubs
Yes.
throughout the country.
Mhm.
I did not only talk about Region 7. I said
Yes.
throughout the country,
Mhm.
the Ministry of Public Telecommunications, they installed and established ICT hubs, not only in schools, RDC boardrooms, offices, and they were functioning until the PPP came in and they care not to maintain those equipment.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And I know the people were saddened. When I visited Rivers View, they quickly told me and said, the internet that you had established doesn't work anymore because the PPP did not maintain it.
Clean it.
Right? And so they were out of connection. So, to say that APNU AFC did nothing, look at Bartica. Bartica benefited from so many major projects, the solar farm, the power station. I can recall myself and Patterson flying into Cameroon, and the generator was down for months, so the people were in dark. And I said to Mr. Patterson, we have to get lights for these people, at least for the Christmas. And the new generator was flown in Christmas Eve day. I could recall it Christmas Eve day. And we had to put it in a sky van. And it landed there, and he had the electricians, whoever from his ministry, go there, spend the night so that the people could get light in time for Christmas.
Yeah.
And these are some of the things that we have to remind the people about what we did
Yeah.
for the people of for the different communities throughout the region.
I even remember 30 new wells being dug with Van Charles and GWI, and so
Exactly.
it's crazy to think that these people would stand up and say that nothing was being done, and hope that the Guyanese people would believe that. Right.
We should be wrapping up on the floor there, if that's so.
This is a live look. Ms. Ukai is still in her
still
presentation.
on.
I think she has about a few minutes to go. MP, as we wrap up, do you have a question?
You talked about the projects that were done in Region 7 that, people, they continue to talk about because these things are in most cases still functioning in those regions, etc. And you pointed out some other projects and, give us an idea of how this government, our government cared about the people. We were talking with the MP that left about, and you made the statement, you even made a song of it. We're hearing of a cash grant here and a cash grant there. I mean, it is the truth. The way you said it, yes, it was funny, but the truth is, this is what they have been doing. And, as most of the MPs are pointing out, this is seeming to be nothing more than a political, stunt or
Structure.
because there's no structure. That's what we're hearing. Could you talk to us about that?
But you're absolutely correct. Another one that I mentioned and that I always see or seen as something that was significant to the people of the Upper Mazaruni was the 21 houses that we built on the CHNPA. There was a program with the IDB, and when I got in there, they were very hesitant. They told me, Minister, it's too expensive to put in there. I said, but when are we going to make a start? It's not going to get cheaper.
Yes.
I forgot to mention that now we are drawing millions of dollars, we should have more
More
houses
houses
if
being
we
built,
build in
yeah.
these hinterland communities. Because with no oil money and just that loan from IDB, we built 21 schools, 21 homes, sorry, 3-bedroom homes with sanitary unit outside and water tank as the source of water. If we could have done it then,
Why not?
why
now?
not now
Mhm,
with the carbon credits that we're going to be receiving?
Yeah.
And so, and I even challenged them in my last year's budget or previous budget that they should now extend that program to Region 8
Yes.
because Regions 1 and 9 had always been benefiting.
Yep.
Always been
Yep.
benefiting.
8 is always neglected.
Right, 8 and 7 was usually
Yes.
neglected. Now, I am saying if we could have done it then, they can do much, much more better for the people in the hinterland. Because to this day, we're still considered as the vulnerable, the most vulnerable
Yes.
and poor. But this budget, I can't say fully that it will serve the needs of the poor and the vulnerable of this country. And you would have heard some of my colleagues, it's anti-poor, which in its sense, when you look at the budget itself. And yes, you're correct. I said they are so much into this cash grants. It reminds me of the old McDonald had a farm.
Here a cash, there
Here
a
a
cash.
cash here, here a cash there, everywhere a cash, you know?
Yes.
Cash here and there. And that's why I said it. Because when you
That's
look at the
true.
uniform cash grants,
Yeah.
flood relief cash
COVID.
grants, COVID cash grants, you know,
Farmers.
it's not done in a predictable manner. It's not done in a
Correct. And
transparent,
that's the real problem.
transparent and accountable manner. If they come to this house and tell us, bring their policy, so how they're going to use these crash grants to improve the lives of the people. What impact will it have on the people? And like I said, the young people, most of the young people in the hinterland are unemployed, and giving them 40,000 or employing them as
In the
CSO for 35,000 because I don't know if they have raised the stipend for those CSOs, and they don't receive it every month. They receive it every 3 months, or sometimes 6 months. It depends. So, what exactly can that do for the people in the hinterland?
If I can add, it's an issue of impact and whether or not they do any impact assessment. Because if you come to me today and you give me $20,000 and I buy some groceries in the market and it lasts me 2 weeks, and you will come back to me in a year to give me anything, you really have not impacted my life in any way.
Exactly.
And so if you do that to 400,000 people, you basically just wasted a couple $1 billion because you have not moved their lives forward. Right? And so this is why the
They
argument
remain.
about increasing salary is better than cash grants.
Right, or giving them as a stipend.
Yeah.
So just that you give them as
As
they
a training,
study
yes, yeah.
and to acquire a skill. So when they're finished training, they have a job. They can get a wage.
As we wrap up, I mean, it's my my belief that absolutely nothing is wrong, and I think every MP that stood there is wrong with a cash grant. But generally, the issue is the way it is being done.
approach.
They have not invested in a study or even a mechanism to set up a welfare system where, you know, that you'll be able to make sure that even if you're going to give everybody, that you really give everybody, because we all know in every single one of the cash grants that they've given out, there have been massive complaints about corruption.
Yeah.
Who it goes to, where it goes to. And that is the biggest issue about it, apart from the fact that it is not something sustainable. Because, I mean, I can only imagine what is happening in our interior areas when it comes to this, because it is so expensive in town. And we understand, because many of these things have to be taken up to the interior region. We know that the prices are sometimes triple the price it is in Georgetown, and they're receiving the same amount as the people in Georgetown, even when it comes to the salary. So really and truly, it is difficult to understand how people manage, you know, in those areas.
This is not about, we've always said cash transfer generally is a good idea. Many of the rich countries do that
They
with
do
their
it,
citizens, but they
but
do it in a manner that is
structured way, predictable.
and
Like you said.
has impact. MP, I want to thank you very much. I will give you a chance to final word on the budget. Normally we ask moving forward, what would you like to see be done with this massive amount of money that will be coming to the country? And speaking specifically to your portfolio.
Okay. What I did not get to mention after the mic went off and
Yes.
they
The
threw me
whole
off,
drama.
the thing, if they did it intentionally, I don't know. I don't want to say that, but I forgot to mention that, domestic violence against women and girls.
Yes.
And mostly indigenous women and girls. It's increasing. It's not a one region thing. It's spreading throughout the region. So when I saw monies were allocated to build shelters, and I think the budget states that they're going to commission two this year, or complete and commission this year, I would really wish to see that these domestic centers be spread throughout the region, because it's an issue now that is happening all over Guyana, not only in Georgetown or on the coast, and too many deaths. We have seen too many deaths of women and men as a result of domestic violence. Every day you see somebody chopping their wife, killing their husband, and leaving children to suffer. So, it's not getting better. Bigger the budget doesn't mean a better life.
Yes.
Because something has to be frustrating these persons for them to behave like that. Something. So I would wish that the monies that is tuned to the 7.81 billion be spent on, like I said, the human resource, so that we can have happy and healthy citizens.
Yes, that's a very good note for us to end on. Thank you very much, MP Hastings Williams. We want to thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. As we continue, folks,
Thank you.
we will be going back to the floor in just a bit. Let's give you an idea of
our lineup.
our remaining speakers for the day, and then I think Ms. Sukai has about 2 or 3 minutes to go.
After her, we have Ms. Geeta Chandan Edmond, who will be presenting for the opposition MPs.
Yes, and she'll be
in
doing
a bit.
public security,
Governance.
governance.
I believe she'll be handling, and she will be followed by Mr. Devin Sayers, our AFC rep, and then followed by Dr. Karen Cummings, and then we'll be having Ms. Beverly Alert, the new member to the National Assembly. She'll be presenting as well this evening. So we still have, a reasonable lineup coming there. And we do anticipate a continuation of great presentation on the opposition MP side.
Yes. So we are going to be taking you back to the floor, live to the floor, and we will be coming back to you in just a bit, as we will have to interview Mr. Roysdale Ford in just a bit. He did his presentation earlier, and we'll be taking the comments from him, his review, his thoughts on budget 2023, and we'll be doing that in a few minutes. So we'll head back to the floor. We'll be listening to Ms. Geeta, and then we'll come back.
Achievements for the year and the rest of the term and beyond. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I endorse this budget for approval.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Minister of Marine Affairs, Minister Pauline Sukai. And now for the Honorable Member, Ms. Geeta Chandan Edmond. Honorable Minister, you may take the podium and proceed. Yes, Honorable Member, I'll start you at 3:55:07.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. As I rise to make my contribution to budget debate of 2023, I will immediately move to do the parliamentary business of close to half and arguably more than half of the Guyanese population at this stage with the current state of affairs in our dear land. Sir, please permit me to declare my gratitude for my family and close friends who continue to support me and to provide the necessary strength which has become a daily occupational requirement. To my mom who is online, I love you. As we look around at the decay before us due to poor governance, most of us are horrified and worried about the current state of affairs. I extend great appreciation to the public servants who have worked tirelessly to complete the technical work that produces a budget. For that reason, your efforts are humbly recognized and appreciated. In this same breath, Mr. Speaker, I extend special recognition to the men and women who protect us on a daily basis, to our soldiers, our prison officers, our firefighters, our policemen and women, and all those honorable men and women within the security sector, and all those frontline workers. Hold firm, the coalition will be back to deliver the good life. Sir, this represents my fourth presentation of this nature and in the capacity of which I hold. And on every occasion of budget presentations by the government, I have maintained several themes. First, sir, there must be competent leadership at the Ministry of Home Affairs. I don't see my friend here, and that's an indication of what I'm speaking about. Public security is serious business, and it demands leadership. I will emphasize that if we continue to ignore the immense incompetence that sits in the chair of breakdown, we will never be able, sir, we will never be able to decline in public security. Honorable Minister Ben, who is here, in his previous ministerial appointment, picked up a certain name, and from his performance to date, it appears that he intends to continue in that vein in the security sector, to not only demolish the homes in Mecca, but the coalition's effective plans and programs that were in place to reduce crime and to make the citizens of this country safe and secure. Mr. Speaker, public security must be reimagined in this new oil and gas paradigm. It must be considered at the cabinet level and a national stakeholder level. It is way too complex, from the Guyana-Venezuela territorial controversy to the youth on the streets whose survival is a daily challenge. The country's security situation has reached its lowest ebbs, Mr. Speaker. So public security in the context of a polarized society must be based on two key considerations: economic security and the general security of all members of society. Mr. Speaker, I take no pleasure in reporting that none of these themes have been addressed in Budget 2023. And as a consequence, I cannot in good conscience lend any hint of support to certain aspects of the budget. And when I say that, there are certain aspects of the budget that are good, and I will support those aspects. But sir, we are in serious trouble. Choke and rob is a daily norm. It happens every second, and the minister is aware of this. It has become so prevalent that Guyanese simply cannot walk past as their fellow citizens are being robbed in plain view. The gunmen have become so bold, Mr. Speaker, they jump out of the car and they pump bullets in their victims. And when citizens alert the police about this, what has just occurred, they respond by saying, "We have the car number." The gunmen are walking into homes and they are executing their victims in the full view of their families. This is public security under the People's Progressive Party. It is the wild, wild west. Families can no longer go out for a peaceful seawall walk. Nobody knows what or who is next. We are at the lowest ebb. And in comparison to the coalition term in office, Mr. Speaker, you would recall that under the coalition that people were safe and secure and that crime was on the decline. This is an indisputable fact, and you can heckle as much as you want. There are no more metal detectors at the night spot. Weapons are seen bulging from the waist of patrons at various night spots. The PPP budgets have always been about brick and mortar, and human development always takes a backseat. And if you look around, Mr. Speaker, you will notice that there are several private security firms in operation. And we must ask ourselves why. And the answer is simple. It's an indication of the people's lack of confidence in the state to provide security. This is an undisputable fact. The number of high-powered weapons in the street is another worrying concern. We will recall the most recent discovery of the 2 high-powered rifles in a bag. Another complaint we've received, Mr. Speaker, is the ease in which firearm licenses are acquired. Reports we have received indicate that for a small fee with no background check, Mr. Speaker, these licenses are granted. Mr. Speaker, sirens blaze through the town with zero accountability. Many of these vehicles are illegally equipped with flashing lights and sirens. Honorable Minister Ben, what are your plans to address this nightmare of a situation? It is absolute lawlessness and chaos. It is an absolute nightmare to drive where out of nowhere these vehicles illegally use these sirens and flashing lights to push you off the road. And this is something that happens on a daily basis. And I say to the Honorable Minister, familiarize yourself with the provisions of the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act. Your colleagues who are heckling can provide you with a section. And I say to you, it is illegal for these private vehicles to be outfitted with sirens and flashing lights. Citizens like myself no longer know the difference between legitimate security vehicles and private vehicles. Lawlessness, Mr. Speaker, has gripped this dear land of ours. Sir, just like the Gotham City, we are in the stranglehold of the Joker and his gang, and we persistently need a hero. Even our classrooms are not safe. Our teachers are under assault. Businessmen and women are expressing their fears about guns for hire. We are now the land of the many sacred cows who are above the law, and those at the bottom are following the examples of those who are at the top. Law and order has been replaced with lawlessness. Loud music blaze at wee hours in the morning. The people cannot sleep. And this is not only my personal experience. This is the experience of many citizens. In this office, Mr. Speaker, has given away to blatant indecency. Accountability has given away to the carnival of corruption. And I see my friend is shaking his head, and I know he agrees with me. In the midst of the grandiose speeches and unrelenting propaganda, we were promised better public security and performance. But, like we all know, things got worse. Budget 2021 came, and again, there were grand speeches and great hype. We were promised better public security and good governance, but things got worse. And this is not only my testimony. This is the testimony of not only the opposition, but the people of Guyana. Budget 2022 came with us like any other budget. There were speeches, propaganda, and no impact. It got worse. Mr. Speaker, here we go again in 2023, and the same thing obtains. And Mr. Speaker, I know many of the other speakers have been quoting, so I will also quote. Albert Einstein told us, and I quote, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." A cursory glance, if you listen to what I've just said, I've quoted Albert Einstein, but it's probably too too high up for you to understand. A cursory glance at budget 2023 reveals that the same methods, same approaches. And Mr. Speaker, this results in insanity. Sir, this budget represents the fourth round of the insanity, which I have already mentioned. This time around, it is presented under the theme, Improving Lives Today, Building Prosperity for Tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, if there is no economic and security for all lives, lives will not be improved and there will be no tomorrow for many. If the people cannot afford basic necessities, there is no security. When the price of Bora, and many of my colleagues have spoken about this, when the price of Bora has increased by over 50%, it ought to be difficult to talk about prosperity for all. This budget was presented against the backdrop of high prices at the market, and it leaves a large section of our population with the view that the prosperity of a few is only available to a selected few. Sir, budget 2023 did not have a situation analysis. Theories or general philosophies that form the honorable gentleman who made this presentation here for over 5 hours. And I say this, for over 5 hours, the people waited to hear how the oil money will make its way to their dinner tables and the lunch kits of their children. But this never happened. It appears, sir, the money has been directed to infrastructure projects. And I wish to state this and place this in record. This is something that we absolutely welcome. We need infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. However, we have to balance that with the well-being and the prosperity of the citizens. Infrastructure, and I state this for emphasis, infrastructure projects are important. I'll now deal with the security allocation. Mr. Speaker, budget 2023 has allocated $58.6 billion for public safety and public security, an increase of $7.1 billion. In 2022, the government allocated $51.5 billion for public safety. What did we see? That is the big question. What did we see? What did we experience during this period? In the year 2022, the crime rate by country 2022 report submitted, and I will lay over these reports that I'm citing, Mr. Speaker, that Guyana has the 8th highest crime rate worldwide of 68.7 and a murder rate of 4 times higher than that of the United States. This statistic is from an independent source and did not square with the numbers provided by the Guyana Police Force, who reported on themselves. Sir, I call on the Guyana Police Force to release the resources on data collection. How are these statistics compiled? What methods of sampling is being employed? Do these statistics consider that Guyanese hardly report incidents of crime to the police force? And we cannot, Mr. Speaker, trust this data because it flies in the face of what we experience every day. So, Mr. Speaker, if a 52.5 billion could not make us safe in 2022, it is safe to conclude that 58.6 billion cannot do the trick, with no plans to address these serious issues. Like most of you, I'm reading. And it is safe to conclude that money is not the problem. The problem lies in the lack of economic security. And it's something that you cannot comprehend. And the feeling of general insecurity in this country. Mr. Speaker, the problem is the compromising of the independence of the Ghana Police Force. The World Bank report has reported that Ghana's poverty rate is among the highest in Latin America and that of the Caribbean. The IDB has noted that Guyanese live on less than $5. Mr. Speaker, in this sad economic context, any strategy to address public security must rest on targeted poverty reduction programs. So, Mr. Speaker, I refer the members on that side of the House who are clearly at a loss with what I'm talking about to the manifesto of the APNU AFC. And I know this is a high level of information for you to comprehend, but read page 24. Page 24 is very instructive. Our policy on public security is premised on the consideration of promoting our people's safety. We tie public security to the economic security of our citizens. It is simple. It is simple. If a man cannot find food, he is likely to become a perpetrator of crime. I now turn to the Ghana Police Force, Mr. Speaker. Between the years 2015 to 2020, the coalition government worked assiduously to professionalize the Ghana Police Force. And on August 31st, 2018, President Granger appointed a substantive commissioner of police, one deputy commissioner for administration, one for administration, one for law enforcement, and one for intelligence. And at the ceremony at State House, the head of state declared, and I quote, "Office of Commissioner of Police is not a toy, a trinket, or a tool of political favor or patronage." This declaration, Mr. Speaker, articulated a policy that established a clear constitutional distinction between the police directorate and the Ghana Police Force. It reinforces the view the police force must be independent. Mr. Speaker, at that moment, we proceeded on the path of a professionalized police force that has gained the trust and the confidence of the public. And after years, sir, after years on the vice grips of phantoms, ghosts, and the drug underworld, the Ghana police force was returned to some semblance of normalcy. The Police Act is very clear. The force is charged with the prevention and the detection of crime. And I know some of you on the other side of the house would want me to elaborate because it's very hard for you to comprehend. But time will not permit me to do that. But what I'll say, Mr. Speaker, is that the hearts of the past and current officers bleed for the Ghana Police Force. Incident after incident, the credibility of the force is being called into question. A few in the leadership structure are under the thumb of the political directorate. The men and women under this leadership cannot speak, and they cower in fear. And this is the reality. This is your legacy. Added to this, they are being instructed to make themselves tools of government propaganda. Sir, and these are not strictly the lamentations of the opposition. It is the people of Guyana who are complaining about this. The U.S. State Department, in its report 2021 Country Reports on Human Rights Practices, Guyana complained that, and I quote, "There were reliable reports that members of the security forces committed abuses. Significant human rights issues included credible reports of unlawful or arbitrary killings, including extrajudicial killings," unquote. And I will submit all of these reports, Mr. Speaker, and I'll say to my colleague that many of your police officers, they are quietly complaining. But I say, like I've said before, to the men and women, I say to you, be professional, hold the strain, we will be back. In the context of the new oil and gas context, where there is economic and as envisioned by the Constitution. Regrettably, Mr. Speaker, I see nothing in this budget that remotely seeks to address these issues. What are your plans, Honorable Minister, besides holding your head to overhaul the police force? How will you strengthen investigative capacity? Is it your long-term plan to always resort to RSS? It must be recalled that under our tenure, there was investigative capacity that was improved by the police force. But we are now back, Mr. Speaker, to being incapable to solve serious crimes. And Mr. Speaker, this is nothing but a sad, sad state of affairs. I'll now turn briefly to the Guyana Fire Service. Mr. Speaker, if there is ever a need to point to the particular area on the Ministry of Home Affairs that reflects the certainty to absolute incompetence, it's the issue of the constant fires. Never in the history of this country we have seen this development. Something is terribly wrong, and there are a lot of conspiracy theories abound. However, Mr. Speaker, I will not venture to engage in these conspiracy theories to besmirch the good reputation of this chamber. I will, however, venture to show a direct link between the incompetence at Brickdam and the inefficiency of the Guyana Fire Service. Sir, allow me to be clear. They are professional men and women who can get the job done in the system. I have researched this issue, Mr. Speaker, and I've spoken to those who are involved. They are demoralized due to the constant political interference and the lack of a system based on merit. Hardworking and bright young people at the Guyana Fire Service are being pushed to the side and overlooked because they refuse to kiss the ministerial ring. Mr. Speaker, you will recall the issue of the promotion list. You will recall the extension of the contract of someone in leadership who should have been pastured a long time ago. A long time ago, not only because of age, but due to statutory requirements. Sir, the proper management of a ministry does not lie with the ability to be present at every fire and watch the manifestation of your incompetence as you drip in sweat. It lies in the ability to let the system work and absolutely stop the micromanagement. Let the professionals do their work. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, our schools are now a target for arsonists. So the incompetence is having real and far-reaching consequences for us. Sir, in any country of any consequences, the minister would have been sent home a long time ago. It lies in the ability to let the system work. And I say let the system work and stop the micromanaging. Let the professionals do their work. It's what they're trained to do. So, Mr. Speaker, the 2.7 billion which allocated to the Guyana Fire Service in 2022 produced more fire. There's no reason to believe that the 545 million, the 489 million, and the 20 million allocated in 2023 will make any difference. You cannot continue to throw money at incompetence. It will make no difference. It is insanity, absolute insanity. The budget needs to include allocation to send the leadership at Brickdam packing. That is the only way to prove it's efficacious. Sir, I'll now briefly turn to immigration and passports. Mr. Speaker, I wish to repeat that Guyana's biggest public security trends remains the issues of economic insecurity. We cannot construct good public security in a nation where a large section of the population feels as if they do not have access to the resources. We cannot talk about public security without addressing the insecurities being felt. So, sir, in that context, we must examine the issue of immigration in the oil-producing Republic of Guyana. National Security Advisor has informed the nation that there are 60,000 Venezuelans currently residing in Guyana. The migration policy has reported that the number of Caribbean nationals entering Guyana has doubled. These statistics and these reports that I'm quoting from will be laid over. And added to this revelation, sir, Guyanese are reporting that they are encountering nationalities from across the globe. And sir, I have no arguments with this. This is understandable. And I don't understand the need for heckling. This will occur because we are being touted as the fastest growing economy in the world. But sir, we on this side of the house, we are cognizant of the fact that we need at least 160,000 workers to reach our potential. This requires a comprehensive immigration policy. So there is immense uncertainty about who has arrived in the land of El Dorado. These numbers are frightening implications for security. There's nothing in this budget, sir, that seeks to ascertain the following. How many foreign nationals are here? How many jobs have been acquired? How many systems are in place to ensure that the nation's national security is not being compromised? What systems are in place to ensure that Guyanese are given the first option for job opportunities? Mr. Speaker, it is a known fact that Guyana possesses a relatively small population in the context of oil and gas, and we may need to source special skills from other places. But the lack of transparency and the lack of a clear and consistent policy by this government have the nation worried. And we need to know, and these are reasonable questions, sir. We need to know, and the people need to know, what category of skills do we require at this juncture? Which foreign nationals have we identified to plug those gaps? How does the policy align with the Citizenship Act, the Immigration Act, and the Constitution in general? Budget 2023 should have included a sizable sum for the Bureau of Statistics to embark on data collection to ascertain what is happening with the immigration policy of the country. Sir, the Migration Policy Institute has cautioned that the discovery of oil will lead to an influx of workers. Even though this is needed, we must ensure that Guyanese workers are our #1 priority. And those who are heckling cannot argue that this is an unreasonable request. It is a reasonable request. I now turn briefly, sir, to governance. Every week, the APNU AFC government, we have reported to the Guyanese people on the decisions of cabinet. We reported on contracts and so many more details. Today, there is a complete blackout on information. Members of civil society are writing countless letters to the Minister of Information to get the details on how contracts are awarded. But, sir, there's little success. The government refuses to be transparent. Sir, we all know that good government demands at minimum the availability of information to the people. Nobody knows what are contained in secret contracts that will impact Guyanese for generations. Sir, there's no information available on the large mining contracts. The government refuses to tell us what concessions have been made on behalf of the Guyanese people. Sir, Budget 2023 is being presented in the government context where the government is openly flouting, and I say this to my colleague, the extractive industry's transparency in initiative standards. This has resulted in the EITI reporting on its board's decision to accord a fairly low score to Guyana. Mr. Speaker, all of this poor governance is coupled with the government's lack of interest in listening to the pleas of civil society. In this regard, sir, the government appears to be engineering a plastic civil society that will remain at its beckon and its call. The government, sir, has moved to question the membership and the leadership of civil society groups that provide constructive critique on their programs and their policies. Members of these organizations are being placed on blacklists and ostracized by the government. So, Mr. Speaker, I take no pleasure in reporting that the fear is real. In my efforts to prepare for this presentation, I made contact with a few members of civil society to get a better understanding of their struggles and what they were facing. And I was told in no uncertain terms, with almost gripping hands, not to reveal the names with whom I've spoken with. The fear of retribution from this government is real, Mr. Speaker. And the government policy of government appears to be, you will have your say, but we will have our way. So, Mr. Speaker, in closing, I wish to re-emphasize that this 781.9 billion budget will amount to nothing if there is no attempt to ensure economic security for the Guyanese people. And this is a real concern, sir. It cannot be taken lightly. It cannot be taken lightly. You have to measure all these measures that you're placing in the budget to ensure that there is economic security for the less vulnerable. So, Mr. Speaker, we have seen for the last 3 years what destructive government looks like and how it can negatively impact our lives. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a deception in 2023 budget, and this is a deception that has become the hallmark of the PPPC. But in closing, I wish to say that there's certain aspects of the budgets where there are positives, infrastructure, there's some sort of benefits for the people, and I have no qualms about that. But I say you have to balance that. You have to absolutely balance that. If you cannot balance that, I will have a difficulty in supporting this budget. And when I speak, this is not my personal view. This is not the view of the opposition, but this is the view of the persons that I've encountered. And I traverse 4, 5, and 6, and this is the view of those people. So when I stand here, this is not a representation of me as a member of the opposition, but this is a representation of the views of those that I represent in 4, 5, and 6. So in closing, Mr. Speaker, I will say that this is the deception that we have seen in the continuous budgets presented by the PPPC, and this has become the deception of the People's Progressive Party. But there are certain aspects, but at this point, I cannot render any sort of support to the budget. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And now for the Honorable Member, Dr. Vindhya Prasad, Minister of Social Services.
It's interesting how my colleague, Minister Robeson Ben, was the center of attention just now. Mr. Speaker, as I add my support to my colleagues in commending Budget 2023, I do so very conscious of the efforts that have been expended by Guyanese across sectors in ministries, giving their input to a budget that is transformational, a budget that is cross-cutting, a budget that is integrated, and a budget that focuses on every aspect of human development and country development comprehensively. As I thank all of those members of staff across ministries, I must recognize the astute leadership of my colleague, Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh, and his team from the Ministry of Finance in crafting what is the biggest budget that we've seen to date. This budget is one that offers much to many, but I will focus on the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security and give you insight into work that has been done, work that is planned, and work that I'm sure that will have an impact on the lives of the most vulnerable and populations that will definitely understand how this budget will impact them, because like last year, they will live it this year and feel the impact on their lives. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this budget is something that my colleagues on the other side should support. Wouldn't you want to support the government's efforts towards children, education for children, the efforts of the government towards keeping children safe, the efforts of government towards providing for children with disability, the efforts of government for for providing solutions for mothers who would want to leave their children in safe and secure places. Mr. Speaker, that is the legacy of the People's Progressive Party civic government in catering for children across the length and breadth of this country. Children who depend on parents, and as such, there is much in this budget for families across the country. As a government, we believe in the stability of families. We believe in community development. We believe in infrastructural development. We're not a government that is impervious to the global crises that is affecting every country in this world. We're not a government that is oblivious to the trends in the world that would have had an impact on so many different aspects of governance and the way people govern. In fact, we have offered as a government tangible solutions to the challenges to food security, making Guyana pivotal in CARICOM, the voice of CARICOM, providing the solutions that CARICOM is following, the region is looking at, the world is looking at in terms of fighting the global crises. Mr. Speaker, we in this National Assembly should not resort to the usual broken narrative of divisiveness and polarization. This is a country that wants unity. This is a country that demands inclusivity. And this is a country that I am very proud of, where our people would like to benefit from what we as a government would have managed to do in just 2 years. Mr. Speaker, if I am to look at what the world says about gender equality, I can quote from a report from the World Economic Forum report. This report is usually presented annually and was first presented in 2006 and speaks to the global gender equality gap insight report. And it's an important thing because, Mr. Speaker, one of the key indicators is economic participation and opportunity. And this is very important because it speaks to what I've been listening to being questioned. This is not Guyana government doing it. This is the World Economic Forum. And in just 1 year, last year, 2022, Guyana traversed 18 spots up from place number 53 to 35. And there have been numerous indicators. And I'm only speaking of what is relevant to my sector. However, if we're to look at many of the other sectors, we could have seen that the contributions of programs that transform the employment prospects of people across the country would have been recognized in moving us 18 spots up. For example, we can speak of Goal, Grow, Win, BIT, just to name a few of those programs that do not come with a price tag. They come absolutely free. They're accessible to all the people of Guyana. You know, one of the members on that side of the House, I believe it was the Honorable Member, Mr. Royce Dale Ford, who spoke about government's boots being on the neck of people. They were on the neck of people in 5 years with a taxation existent budget, budgets that were crafted on the taxes on the backs of people. Mr. Speaker, this is a budget that does not give any new taxes to the people. None at all. In fact, the income tax threshold has been increased so that people are able to have in their pockets $3 billion and 12,000 people are not in the tax net anymore. That is the level of the kind of development, the kind of governance, and the kind of input that we want to have on the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, I will be happy to provide this report to you. In fact, in education attainment, Guyana ranks first globally, tying with 21 other countries, such as Canada, Brazil, the Netherlands, and Jamaica, which is the only other Caribbean country in first place. Read it. Guyana has also tied for first place in ranking for enrollment in both secondary and tertiary education. This is especially important as it clearly indicates the outcomes and long-term impacts of projects implemented by the government. I continue. The construction of schools and provision of human and other resources in Amerindian communities throughout the interior regions of Guyana has made educational accessible and attainable even during periods where Guyana has had limited fiscal capacity. This is an expansive report, Mr. Speaker, and I'll be presenting it to you on conclusion of what I'm saying. Mr. Speaker, I believe that I'd like to ask my colleagues, my Guyanese brothers and sisters on the opposite side of the House to remove the myopic lens, to remove the obligatory mantle that they like to wear when it comes to causing division and rejecting progress and development. You know, it's a simple walk from over there to over here. And deep down, I know you want to do it. You're more than welcome. We embrace collaboration. We embrace your support. We embrace your working with us. Feel free to walk across the floor. It's as easy as that. Mr. Speaker, when we look at our country, no country is insulated from the world economy and the global crises. But we want to say that Guyana has managed to, in the shortest possible time, have the opportunity to transform the lives of women and men across the country, a program that I'm immeasurably proud of, the Women's Innovation Investment Network Program, and there's nothing to compare it to in your 5 years because nothing existed. The WIN initiative is a program that has produced 6,193 trained persons across every region in this country. In fact, just last year, we were able to provide free training with no prerequisite required for admission, and 4,033 women and men benefited from that training, which is free, which is offered in a hybrid model, and which allows them the potential of employment and starting a micro enterprise. Mr. Speaker, no amount of noise will dissuade me from presenting irrefutable facts that 6,193 people across this country have benefited. And this year, $100 million will ensure 6,000 more women and men benefiting this year alone. Mr. Speaker, I want to say it is not only training, but this is a comprehensive model of training, moving people into our Win in Business clinic, giving them business literacy training, moving them into the field of micro enterprise. On our sample of 2,339 of these persons who have been trained, we have 48% of them who would have developed business proposals and 25% of them who own a business. That is the level of progress that has happened in 1 year. For the first time in the region, for the first time in the Caribbean, and definitely for the first time in Guyana, we have an app that is called the WIN app, where 750 women have the opportunity to advertise their business for free. Coming this year with a collaboration with MMG, these women will be in a position to offer their products for sale on this app. This is a beautiful blend of IT, entrepreneurship, and vision. Mr. Speaker, I would like to continue on WIN and to say that there are so many projects that will result in people from the hinterland and across the coastland, in remote and rural areas who will benefit from that WIN training. Those who've been trained in professional courses like elder care, child care, patient care, will now benefit from the opportunity, whether individually or in consortium, to be able to be referral points where patients from hospitals, people who would like to have access to caregivers who are trained, they can do this, utilizing those persons who have been trained through the WIN program. One of the novel initiatives that have been established, and this year will really speak to thousands of women who, when they saw this announced in the 2023 budget, they were ecstatic. And that was the establishment of day, night care, and early childhood development centers. This is a blended model, and this is the first of its kind in the region, definitely in the Caribbean, and I can venture to say perhaps in the world. And I have recognized that women who work long hours, people who work long hours, parents, single parents, mothers and fathers who would like a safe space for their children to be kept while they're at work, they now will have the option, as this budget provides $100 million so that we can start construction of these day and night care and early childhood development centers. Mr. Speaker, this offers a sanctuary for children, and those persons who've been trained, not only are they trained in childcare, they will also receive training in special needs as well as early childhood, and this can be something that Guyana is very proud of. Mr. Speaker, as we continue to look at what was achieved and what is to be achieved, I think I cannot go forward without recognizing that the WIN program operates out of a building called the Guyana Women's Leadership Institute. This was a building that was in serious disrepair. Everything had grounded to a halt, and now that building is a thriving hub, completed with modern classrooms, a brand new computer lab, a WIN in Business incubator, and will house the first of the day, night care, and early childhood development centers. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, we're adding to this because we understand that people, especially women, like to cook. Why not make it profitable? And so we will be putting out for those women an opportunity to have free training where they can, from this training, start their own businesses. A state-of-the-art culinary center will be launched in the first quarter of this month, and women across the country will have access to training at no cost to them. Mr. Speaker, and it's not just training. This training is certificate training done by the University of the West Indies, the UK ABMA, and through Coursera, offering those persons who come through the WIN program an opportunity of stackable courses, giving them a recognizable qualification that puts them on easy footing to further develop themselves in the technical vocational field, to have employment, or to start their own micro enterprise. Mr. Speaker, we have been in talks with a number of entities, the Private Sector Commission, GCCI, to ensure that these women have an entry into those places where ordinarily they never had such an opportunity. The fact that this speaks to women who have never before been in the world of business is a powerful message to all women in our country. This is empowerment. This is real empowerment. Nothing can be achieved without single-minded focus and hard work. And Mr. Speaker, I am prepared to work hard. In fact, I am a hard worker. And I believe that I work with people who have similar vision with me to make these things materialize. In fact, if we looked at the first week of registration, over 7,000 people applied. We didn't only leave them like that. Over 3,000 women benefited from seed funding for their businesses through a collaboration with the World Food Program. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that mothers, the single parents that we consider, the single fathers, the single mothers, they will also benefit from subsidies which come out of the ministry that helps them with their child care costs. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the We Lift activity that is usually celebrated around International Women's Day has grown. From 75 women-owned businesses, we grew to 150 women-owned businesses under one roof, under the We Lift program. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Human Services Gender Affairs Bureau continues to work with men and women across the country, developing women's groups, men's groups, and working to continue on the Shared Responsibilities campaign. We are now embarking on an exercise where we will be training a number of persons on gender, on shared responsibility, gender-based violence, and a number of other social issues, including coaches, taxi drivers, bartenders, to name a few of that. Our groups expand and extend throughout the length and breadth of Guyana, and work is expected to be complete on the national gender policy this year, 2023. Mr. Speaker, we have as a government always put emphasis on families. And as such, our Family Enhancement Unit will be expanded, and the excellent work that this unit has been doing in Region 4 will now move across to the various regions and will be in collaboration with our other programs so that holistically we can cater for the social issues that abound. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I have always believed that there is no need to say what people live. Work speaks for itself, and the work of the Ministry of Human Services is very visible for all of Guyana to see and to participate in. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the Child Care and Protection Agency, which is pivotal when it comes to the care of children, has been consistently working on developing a number of key areas that address child abuse. The Every Child Safe project speaks to community engagement and interaction in all of Guyana's regions, and a number of persons will benefit from training. We have produced a parenting manual and workbook, and there will be structured training for parents across this country. In addition to that, we have allowed children to express their voice as a part of us protecting child rights and giving children a platform on which they can share their experiences on safety and security. We have managed to produce a storybook where children would have shared their stories on safety and what it means to them. The Street Light Project, which falls under the Every Child Safe program, is a key project as it speaks to children who are on the streets. We have been effectively removing children from off the streets, working with their families, addressing socio-economic issues, and we have managed to remove at least 30 of those children from our streets. This program will intensify as we do not want to have any child on the street, and we must get to the source of why they're on the street, work with them and their family so there is not a recurrence. Mr. Speaker, the community approach that we are taking through the Child Care and Protection Agency is bound to yield results because we are not working in a vacuum or silo. We're also looking at those children who have special needs. This budget provides, as a promise from His Excellency, a fleet of 7 retrofitted vehicles that will help those children who are living with disabilities. And this takes me to the work of the ministry on persons living with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, we have managed to help hundreds of persons across the length and breadth of Guyana, centrally from the Difficult Circumstances Unit and through our outreaches to have free access to support aids, assisted aids, wheelchairs, walkers, and so many more things. Mr. Speaker, the construction of the Learning Lab, a training complex for persons living with disability, will be opened in the first quarter of this year, providing for the first time an empowerment entrepreneurship opportunity for persons living with disabilities. Last year, $100 million would have been budgeted. This year, we continue to focus on training. We continue to work with persons living with disabilities, and a revolving fund for persons living with disabilities can be accessed through the Small Business Bureau. So there is a comprehensive outlook to the kind of support and help that we are giving to the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, we have been working assiduously protecting child rights, and as such, last we were able to ensure that legislation was passed in alignment with the Hague Convention on International Adoption, which is expected to commence this year. We have been working with the U.S. State Department and other state entities and other stakeholders to ensure that this happens. Our legislative agenda is a rich one. We have completed the counter trafficking in persons legislation, and that will be brought on the floors this year. We have other pieces of legislation to consider, to review, and to bring at some time to this House, including the Domestic Violence Act, which will incorporate new forms of family violence, the Harassment Act, which I'm sure some of you will be very wary of having, but that will be happening. We will be looking at the pension and the Poor Relief Act, which are archaic pieces of legislation. Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you to the international community that would have not only been very supportive, but would have recognized the sterling work done by the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. These last 2 years, we would have spent looking at a number of the homes and some of the establishments that focus on the elders, on children, and on persons living with disabilities. Last year, a beautiful new kitchen and recreation center was opened at the Sophia Drop-In Center, much to the delight of hundreds of children, modern and beautiful. What they cooked in and what they ate in was akin to a shack. It was appalling and horrible. I want to say also that this year, that center will receive a much needed facelift. We're also looking at the expansion of our shelters. We're also looking at shelters for domestic violence and trafficking in persons. And we're also looking at the residential care facility for children living with disabilities, and they will have a brand new facility. All of these will be enclosed in the Mahaika complex. Mr. Speaker, the more noise you make, it gives me the impetus to continue. Mr. Speaker, parents who have children living with disability will continue to benefit through the work of the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security and through the budget to the tune of $40.4 billion. Mr. Speaker, our pensioners would have received an increase which totals to 67% over just 2 years now moving to this budget. And this is in comparison to less than 30% of the 5-year period of the APNU AFC government. I will not stand here and say that is the be-all and the end-all of pension, but there is a tangential increase that is planned, and pensioners will not only benefit from the increase to $33,000 and of interest, the life expectancy is increasing because we have seen from 2020 to 2023, we started with just about 60,000 pensioners. Now we are projecting 73,000 pensioners, which means we are also helping those persons to have access to their source documents so that they can access their pension. We have also transform the delivery system of pension, creating a shut-in delivery system, a direct delivery system, alternate venues so the post offices are not crowded. We're adding to this MMG very soon, and pensioners would have more than 1,000 new locations to access their pension. Mr. Speaker, and it's not only the pension, it's the water subsidy that you took away. That you also raised taxes on
Be careful, honorable member. I didn't take away anything.
The honorable members removed. Also, Mr. Speaker, we're looking at public assistance spiraling to 29,000 recipients. And this is remarkable. And this has happened because of a decision made by this government when just about 5,000 children received $100,000 cash grant towards their permanent disability. All those children are now moved to the permanent register of public assistance, which means that a significant number of that 29,000 is comprised of children and adults living with permanent disabilities. A policy change also resulted now in persons with permanent disabilities not having to apply and reapply. They can now access the public assistance more effortlessly, if I put it that way. We are creating a disability unit at the ministry that is geared for the first time ever in Guyana, a whole unit for persons living with disability, focused on their assistance, focused on supportive and assistive aids, focused on training, and focused on every single need that would arise for persons living with disabilities in order to structure and streamline the efficiency and efficacy of our ministry. There is also going to be a senior citizens unit to focus on all of the elders and the seniors as we value their contributions, and we would like to ensure that whatever is within our power, we can provide to them so they can have a better quality of life. Mr. Speaker, the ministry's I Care program. This was a new program, and this program was able to offer to persons just in 2022, 1,230 persons free tested spectacles. Mr. Speaker, we went to communities that never had this kind of access before, including Mocha, Philippi, to name a few. And I can give you the list of all the communities so that you can hear. Baramita, Tushan, Monrepo, Bartica, Yupakari, Kumaka, Camarang, Kato, Aishalton, Anai, Kwakwani, St. Cuthberts, Wakenham, Susanna's Ross, just to name some of them. Mr. Speaker, last year we were able to do just over 1,000 spectacles as well, and this is a program that we have seen make a difference in the lives of people, whether it's their education as children or pensioners whose face light up because they're able to now read their books. This is a very, very helpful program. Mr. Speaker, through the Difficult Circumstances Unit, we have also helped with home rehabilitation for pensioners and persons living with disability and single parents, and we continue to offer assistance in other areas. Mr. Speaker,
Thank you, honorable member. I'll assist you with an extension if I get a movement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask that my colleague be given time to continue. I know she has a very large sector and would love to have lots of time.
Honorable Minister, you'll have 5 minutes to conclude. Thank you very much.
thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The night shelter is a facility that has undergone, I would say, complete renovation from looking like what I call the chicken coop when I came into this ministry. It is now a place that provides a dignified environment for people who are homeless, people who are indigent, and people who require shelter and a hot meal. This year, the night shelter will also benefit from a kitchen. And for those of you who even deign to look at people on the street, we are not only looking at them on the street, we are removing them from the streets through our health program, and we are ensuring that they're well taken care of. We have excellent collaborations with the mental health unit of the Ministry of Health and the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation to ensure that they're well taken care of. Mrs. Veersamy, good work as the administrator. Mr. Speaker, in addition to what has been happening at the night shelter. Those persons who have been removed from the streets and are able-bodied will, through a collaboration between the Ministry of Labor and Human Services, I spoke to my colleague, will be introduced a bit so that they can be trained in technical vocational skills and have the opportunity to get back into the world of work. Mr. Speaker, I want to just conclude with something that has always troubled me, and that is gender-based violence. This ministry has received commendation from the UNFPA this year for the work that it has done in conjunction with Spotlight. And I will just read a few excerpts. You know it. I think some of you may have to call 914 from time to time. It works, and it has helped a number of persons. This year alone, we received over 15,000 calls on 914 as compared to last year, 12,000 calls. From the Survivors Advocates Program, we have managed to have over 1,200 interventions helping those survivors of gender-based violence. Our legal pro bono initiative, which complements the government subvention to legal aid, providing free legal service to persons experiencing domestic violence, continues and is a collaboration between this ministry and the Guyana Bar Association. Mr. Speaker, we have 500 free cases so that we can at least help 500 persons experiencing violence. Mr. Speaker, I want to read you just a few, and I will leave this with you as the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security is the national coordinating entity for Spotlight in Guyana. It leads in conceptualizing holistic national efforts for preventing and responding to GBV, engages other parts of the government in such national efforts. If there's any distinguishing feature of Spotlight in Guyana, it must be national ownership. At the most recent NSC of the program, the minister committed to incorporating elements of Spotlight into national budgets, noting in particular the preventive community-level activities that address the root causes of violence. We would have established the Community Advocate Network, and we would have trained persons, hundreds of persons, in 8 of 10 regions. Mr. Speaker, this Spotlight initiative works towards providing support on the draft domestic violence bill, the gender-based violence essential service package for Guyana, the 914 24-hour hotline service, the GBV app, and the COP Squad initiative. Thank you to the person much maligned just now in a very, anyway, the person, Minister Robeson, thank you for cooperating with this ministry. So together we would have achieved training of 1,400 plus police officers through the COP Squad 2000 initiative. Mr. Speaker, the Survivors Advocate Program continues to work as it's all across in the courts of Guyana. We also have shelters and a collaboration between the Ministry of Legal Affairs and this ministry will yield the Hope and Justice Centers, where we will provide all the services required for persons experiencing domestic violence under one roof. If this is not something to be proud of, then you're blinkered as usual. Mr. Speaker, I would like to leave you with the final comment from this report. The level of commitment, this is from the UNFPA Spotlight Country Report. The level of commitment of the Minister of Human Services and Social Security and the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security in advancing a holistic approach to addressing gender-based violence in Guyana is exemplary. Spotlight played a catalytic role, which now promises longer-term sustainability thanks to political leadership, sound legal and policy frameworks, and integration of models and services in national mechanisms and budgets, all buttressed by community-level engagement and civil society partnership. Mr. Speaker, I could go on like this for many hours, but I know my time is at an end. I want to say thank you to the people of Guyana for the privilege of serving them. We will continue to service, continue to deliver to the people of Guyana. We do so with humility, and I say to my colleagues, my brothers and sisters on the opposite side of the house, cross the floor, support the budget, because this is only just some of what the 2023 budget promises for the people of Guyana. Transformational, innovative, cross-cutting, and simply spectacular. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now invite the Honorable Devon Sears to make his contribution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is a privilege for me to present to this honorable House and the citizens of this great country called Guyana my contribution to the national budget debate for fiscal 2023. Let me state at the onset that it's my intention to focus my contribution on improving the lives of every Guyanese, to highlight inconsistencies in budget 2023 and make recommendations which should be considered on its improvement. In areas where I do not go into details, I'm pretty sure my colleagues who are to come will deal with those issues. No responsible person would dispute the fact that indeed this is the largest budget in Guyana's history, a budget that should have catered room for equality, bridging the gaps of poverty, and embody generational wealth. But this budget does not do that, Mr. Speaker. Instead, this budget averts to address the growing economic crisis that Guyanese face on a daily basis. Mr. Speaker, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the government side of the House who attempt to convince Guyanese that they care, constantly insulting the Guyanese intelligence and attempting to distract them with chicken feed and, of course, hogwash. Mr. Speaker, there is no substance in their arguments, and constantly they ridicule and criticize our term in government. And also, they give ball-by-ball coverage and what is to happen and who did what and what not. But Mr. Speaker, might I remind this honorable House that it is the APNU AFC who holds or who have acquired over 50% of votes in the last elections, and who should be sitting on that other side of the House. Might I remind the government that we must exercise political maturity. Every point that is made by my colleagues on this side of the House comes with substance, and we represent the people because they elected us here. The harsh reality is this, Mr. Speaker. When we look at the economy of Guyana, the World Bank, in its recent updated fact sheet on Guyana, it said that Guyanese are living under $5 US every day. That's $1,000. Mr. Speaker, that is unacceptable, especially in an oil-rich economy. Mr. Speaker, it's embarrassing to note that the PPP government have embraced autocracy and also dictatorial governance. That is not what Guyana should represent, Mr. Speaker. It is noted as well that Guyana ranks one of the lowest in terms of living conditions in this part of the world. Mr. Speaker, we have a brain drain situation. A lot of our educated young men and women are seeking employment overseas because the government cannot cater for their qualifications in this oil-rich economy. Mr. Speaker, in order to effectively we must focus on the non-oil sectors, such as tourism. Tourism, it creates jobs, strengthens local economy, contributes to conserve the natural environment and cultural inequality. This cannot be achieved. And in the ministry audit the tourism industry, said how we, as compared to 2021, by 85%. He talked about the CPL cricket finals, which is coming to Guyana. But Mr. Speaker, you know what is surprising? That the tourism industry have been performing very well, but yet still, this government decided not to give a proper increase in the budgetary allocation that reflects that growth. Mr. Speaker, that is disappointing. Mr. Speaker, 83.9 increase in tourism from 2021 to 2022 is a big leap. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member boasted about 3,300 rooms that will come on stream because of massive investments. Mr. Speaker, we are the #1 tourist destination, eco-tourist destination, named in 2019, and we hold a solid spot on the global market for sustainable tourism. But yet still, they decided to give the Ministry of Tourism only an increase of 7%, jumping from 2022, $6 billion to 6.5 in 2023. But Mr. Speaker, let's look at what is happening, the breakdown. In terms of the allocation, Mr. Speaker, when you look at program code 234, tourism development and promotion, the allocation is this, Mr. Speaker. $33 million is going to capital work. Mr. Speaker, you know what that money is going to? A flagpole project at this very center here, the payment of retention and provision for a parking lot and a trestle, all right? Ms. Minister, honorable member, this is not enough when it comes to dealing with tourism, especially if we want to empower people. Mr. Speaker, I want to touch on a few considerations that maybe the government and the honorable member Ashley Singh should take into consideration. Mr. Speaker, the training and hospitality school, while it's a good, very good initiative, and it's welcome because we want to elevate tourism within our country. Mr. Speaker, the location might be an issue because if you look at where these huge major investments in hotel and infrastructure is coming from, it's along the coast and Georgetown, Port Morant. I would like to believe that many of their employees to go, because we will see that the government can consider setting up one in every region so that we can effectively deal with the hospitality sector. Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC, in its greatest vision to transform this sector, created regional tourism committees with the aim of having greater inclusion and bipartisan cohesiveness geared towards regional development. These committees need funding, Mr. Speaker. I'm speaking about the regional tourism committees. Mr. Speaker, no more effectively serve their region, because, Mr. Speaker, we cannot run away from some product. With regards to and happening here in Georgetown. These, Mr. Speaker, I'm also to the U.S. State Department Canada, UK, citizens coming to Guyana. Second,